It concerns Europe. You talked a lot today about the situation there, about our relations. But nevertheless, perhaps we can make some more efforts at the diplomatic level so that we are heard and understood in the EU and in Europe as a whole. Is this possible, in your opinion?
Well, I am not criticizing you, but I have a question from the category of how to make a dog stop eating its own tail. How to make it so that Brussels takes bananas out of its ears and starts listening to us, and even not to us, perhaps, but to the voice of reason, to its inner voice, to the voice of its own people. How to make it so. Perhaps we should start with the question of the lack of freedom of the media and the lack of freedom of speech in these countries. Because this is the main reason why many people are absolutely in a vacuum of information. Perhaps we should start in the conditions of the current deep confrontation that is initiated and subsequently intensified by the collective Brussels. The question of Russia being heard and understood in Western Europe has not a technical but a fundamental worldview. Therefore, I say that we should only start with this issue. Then these questions will simply become a chain. To restore the elementary mutual understanding, it is necessary not to correct the tactics, but to radically change the very foundations of approaches, but not our approaches, but of the European Union. We have always been open to cooperation, to partnership, to friendship. We had only one condition. The international law should be observed, which includes everything: laws, morality, laws in the form of clear, not known rules, but norms that are fixed. If we talk about morality, it is also fixed in the international law in the form of mutual respect, non-destructive attitude to each other, an understanding of what a sovereign state is, that internal affairs of independent states. Therefore, there should be changes in the approaches of the West, in this case of Western Europe. Unfortunately, we do not observe this. Europe, which has lost its own internal meanings, which has lost its unifying goals, has found them in an artificial, sometimes violent, manifestation in various spheres, such as, for example, militarization, the creation of the image of Russia as an external enemy, and of course Russophobia, which is also forcibly imposed. It does not come from the people of Europe. It does not come from the interests of society in these countries. It is imposed on top. The accepted rearmament programs for hundreds of billions of euros, the legal fixation of the terms of readiness for a direct conflict, as it is designated there, with the border of the 29th and 30th years, speak not about the desire to build the architecture of European security, but about the purposeful preparation for war. In such an atmosphere that has engulfed Europe, this atmosphere of military hysteria, and it is heated up by irresponsible statements of individual politicians, any rational word of Russia simply cannot be heard, not because we speak unclearly, but because they are in a state of information vacuum that is filled with this very white noise. Do you remember how they said that they should include strategic silence? Their mass media have a strategy of strategic silence. These are the categories that do not allow them to be heard. In addition, all this is surrounded by anti-Russian, Russophobic propaganda. Therefore, yes, diplomacy is the art of negotiations. Have you ever seen negotiations that are held silently, which do not imply the exchange of opinions, verbal, written, recorded? Have you ever seen such negotiations? I have not. Negotiations and diplomacy are an account of mutual interests. They are a tool for making unilateral demands and ultimatums. How can you hear someone, Russia or another country, especially understand in conditions of refusal of mutual dialogue, when the ambassadors of the European Union and their capitals forbid to meet with the Minister of Foreign Affairs on the issue that interests them, which they devote 90% of their airtime? This is absurd. This is a deliberate law breaking of all these sound absorbing devices of their own. They did everything to blind themselves, to blind, so to say, not far from the truth, to blind. Therefore, the answer lies on the surface. In order for Russia to be heard and understood there, the European political class needs to gain willpower, wisdom. They need to stop crawling into uncontrolled escalation and aggression. I say it again. The main thing is to hear the voices of their own people, their own voters, to give them the legal stolen right to express their free will. People in Europe are tired of the fact that they have to sort of be a burden to the Kiev regime, as if they have to support these workers at the bank. And let them just work at the bank. But they are bloody workers. They are bloodsuckers. I think this is the answer. And all this needs to be done not from a position of power, because this collective minority does not have this power, but from a position of common sense, assessment of one's own mistakes, work on one's own miscalculations, and a way out of the reality of surrealism. Thank you very much, Maria Vladimirovna. Thank you.